president and founder of Frame of Mind Coaching, and you have just joined the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast, where what we do is we invite leaders from all over the world to come onto the podcast and get coached live and in person. Today, my guest is Wanda Toro Turini, and she is the inventor of ecoFiles and the founder of a concept, a platform, an idea called Catchwords.com. Wanda, welcome.
Yay. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you.
So first of all, where are you in the world?
I am currently in New Jersey.
Okay.
And actually planning a move next month to Massachusetts. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
In the US, of course.
We know. Okay. Good. Okay. So tell us a little bit about what is Catchwords? Like explain to us what you do and why it's such an amazing idea.
Sure. So what we do is help service-minded experts who love to share their message, whether it's through video appearances, speaking in person, physical, digital stages, podcast interviews like this. We help them actually connect to their anonymous fans in their audience, right? And what we do is we do this by using our proprietary texting platform, and we wrap some killer strategy around it so that every single, currently video appearance, but every appearance that you have, you can actually connect with all of those people that, maybe a little bit intrigued by what you said and may say, oh, I really need to follow up, but they never do. Right.
Okay. So what's the magic here? Is it the platform or the strategy? That's what I want to know.
It's actually the 1-2 punch of the combination of the two. So what's interesting, if I may kind of explain why I even created
Please.
this, right? Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years. I used to, I have a doctorate in pharmacy. I used to be a pharmaceutical marketing and sales executive. And I had way too many innovative ideas for that space. I mean, they really supported me for a very long time. But I just knew I had to break out and execute some of these ideas and solutions that I had in mind. So in that process, I've actually launched a lot of different types of software and consulting services and such. So the platform that Catchwords is on is actually called ecoFiles, because I was in this major medical conference, like over 50,000 attendees. I had my small exhibit booth, and at the end of the conference, there was literally, Kim, a human climbable mountain of marketing materials, paper that was being thrown out at the end of the conference. And I recall as a marketer for a big company, I was spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on printing these things. But now as an entrepreneur, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a waste. And when we attend those conferences, it's also just not convenient for us to carry around all that paper, right? So 100%. That moment, it's totally inconvenient. So that moment, which was in 2007, Kim, I'm aging myself, right? But in 2007, I said, this problem has to be solved. And so I called it ecoFiles that day because I wanted it to be an eco-friendly way of distributing materials, right? It took us 2 years to evaluate different platforms. We looked at, do we develop an app? Do we scan QR codes, whatever? But we decided on texting because texting is ubiquitous. That in particular was an international conference. We wanted it to be accessible to everyone around the globe. You didn't have to download an app, blah, 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 yada, 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 right? But back in 2009, when I finally got this up and running as ecoFiles, I was approaching companies about being eco-friendly.
Right.
And they said, wow, this is great, but only teenagers text. Adults really don't text. And that was then, right? But it was really crushing. I spent a lot of our profits on this dream because I envisioned completely changing how we distributed information. I mean, now, if you had an update on a brochure, you could actually you knew who requested it. You could proactively send it to them. You could create relationships as a result. And it was much more convenient for the user as well. So I tabled that and I continued trudging along in my consulting firm. I was doing regulatory consulting for pharma. And then I had to speak in front of audiences. And so literally fast forward almost like 5 years after I invented ecoFiles, I'm there in front of conservative pharmaceutical executives. I had to pay $10,000 for the opportunity to speak in front of them. So I said, wow, as a small guy, I really need to make sure I bump up the ROI for this. And I said, well, why don't I use ecoFiles? I mean, it wasn't created for that. And fast forward, I used it. So using the technology alone, I was able to capture 25% of my audience. That means 25% of my audience was texting for my slides. Right.
Okay.
And then with marketing strategy, I started tweaking, like, what can I offer? How do I present it? How do I visually present it and verbally present it? And I ultimately got to having 76% of my audience consistently texting my catchword. Now, it wasn't a catchword back then, right? But ecoFiles didn't make sense now because a speaker isn't looking to be eco-friendly. So it's an interesting kind of journey of how it was created for one thing. And I still believe to this day that it's a huge option, to be an eco-friendly way of distributing paper brochures once we start getting in front of people again, right? But I found greater power in actually augmenting any of my speaking engagements. And it got to the point where as a small business owner, I only had to present at 2 major conferences in order to capture 76% of an audience of 300 people. I mean, I was actually overwhelmed with leads. And I grew my business, and I don't want to take it. I have a whole story. I mean,
sure. Okay. So I got it. But here's the thing, you and I should probably talk after. That's a whole other story. So I'm always in front of audiences, and I'm always wondering, how do I really connect with more people in the audience when so many of them sit silently? And I often find out after the fact, like, people remember things that I've said literally 5 years later. They say, I remember that story about. It just happened to me yesterday, actually. I remember the story you told me about whatever it was. I'm like, wow, like, I don't even remember saying that story, but okay.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
You're impacting people, and they are truly anonymous. Like when I came up with that term, yes, these anonymous fans, it is true. It's not making it up.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. And just so everybody knows, it's Catchwords, KETCH words.com.
Yes. And I have a resource to share with the catchword later on when it's appropriate.
Okay, we'll get there. Okay, so but what is your greatest challenge right now? How can I help you from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah. So I really appreciate it. So my challenge right now is really trying to get the message out to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. So I think it's interesting because I have this great energy around really feeling that everybody that shows up should have a catchword, right? And it's not just because I invented it for, for our value, but I truly believe in that. So I have this great passion, and also technology changes very, very quickly, right? So there is a little bit of a race to make sure that we're out there. I invented this platform. There's no other platform that delivers information with a text, an email, and an attachment. So that's very unique to us. We are now available for global audiences. So we put in a lot of effort. I put in a lot of personal effort to do that. And so I want to get the message out very quickly. And I believe, believe a lot in creating a community around this. I look at Russell Brunson as a model, right? How he had a software, but then he put with ClickFunnels, and then he puts together this community to ensure that people are optimizing it. And that's why I didn't make Catchwords actually a do-it-yourself software as a service program, because I saw the difference between 25% and 76%, right? And to me, I want to impact. I want to change the world, right? So my challenge is, what can I do to spread the word as quickly as possible, and what are some of the things I can do to really spread like wildfire so that everybody has a catchword?
So what comes up for me is 3 strategies. Ready?
Yes.
Number 1 is, I know myself, I'm a member of many groups on Facebook and LinkedIn. One of the groups I am a member of is literally called the Secret Society of Speakers. I don't think I was supposed to tell you that, right? But what I'm really trying to say is there are lots and lots of speaking groups on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., who would be very, very interested in this information because their primary goal, over and above presenting and doing an amazing job, is really connecting with the audience. So this is very valuable information. So that's thought number one. Along with that idea, so part A, part B is connect with organizations like CAPS, Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, and the National Association of NASP, Speaking Professionals, NASP. Okay, in the US. Okay, so, and those are organizations where they're looking for information, they're looking for tools. This speaks right to their needs and right to their interests. So that's, reach speakers directly. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is that I really, really recommend that you get connected to all the podcasts of the world. And there are 2 resources for you.
Okay.
Maybe more. There are lots of resources, but Interview Connections is amazing. They hook you up with speaking podcasts, but also radioguestlist.com. I don't know if you know of all of these resources.
I'm actually a client of Interview Connections. So
amazing.
Fantastic.
They're awesome. Okay. Fantastic.
What was the second?
Radioguestlist.com.
Guest
so
list.
they literally just send out like, hey, this person's looking for a guest, etc. But you can also just have a listing on this website where people find you and send you a request for, will you be on my podcast kind of concept. So that's number 2.
Sweet.
Okay. So that's 1, 2. Number 3 is I really think that this would benefit from the right influencers, talking to the right audiences that aren't necessarily easily found through groups. So if you had someone like Brendan
Richard.
Yes, someone like that, right? So find the right influencers. A great way to find influencers is through a company called Hollywood Branded. The person who runs that is Stacy Jones.
Okay.
And she just finds the right person or people for the right products.
Okay. And it's people that are actually open to that, because sometimes
100%.
You approach people and they're like, yeah, we don't do joint venture.
The thing is, if you approach people, it doesn't work. But if she approaches people, she knows who to approach for what. So you need like an agent for this.
Yeah.
That's
Hollywood
what they
Branded,
do.
It's called
hollywoodbranded.com.
and Stacy Jones.
Stacy Jones, tell her I sent you, Kim Addis. Okay. And then the last but not least thing is I really believe in targeted ads or targeted messaging. And so, you can create an ad or whatever it is and run it on Facebook specifically for speakers, coaches, and trainers. Is this your challenge? And I'd be like, yeah, that's my challenge. Do you want to capture more of your audience? Do you want to do a better job of lead generating? Do you want more, do you want to build up your list? Whatever it is that your angle is, I think that you can speak directly to your market through targeted advertising. So it feels like you've heard some of these before.
Yes. And you know what? To be transparent, we launched in March, as you can imagine, right? And the messaging was very focused on speakers and the physical speaking experience. So you can imagine what happened in March when it was like, we're not speaking.
Right.
And I borrowed a lot of money. We used a lot of our personal, investments to do this whole big Facebook ad launch and all that stuff. And COVID hit, right? It was a mixed blessing because we realized that it was not only physical in-person speakers that could benefit from Catchwords, right? So our messaging actually improved significantly as a result, but then still the financial strain was with us. And is still with us, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate, kind of just trying to look at all of the options that I can do right now.
I'll throw another one at you.
Oh, sure.
So by the way, like, I mean, for me personally, as a speaker who last year spent most of the year on the road, obviously I'm not doing that anymore. I'm doing all virtual presentations. And, earlier this year I had a presentation with 800 people on whatever the Zoom, the platform, whatever the platform, 800 people.
Yeah.
And 95% of them, 98% of them were invisible, silent.
Right.
Whatever the word is.
Those anonymous fans. But now what's interesting is even if you set up your Zoom for registration, right? So people provide you their email address for registration. Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're raising their hand to say, yes, I'm interested in connecting further, right?
Right.
So that's the value of integrating a catchword, because it's literally a digital way for somebody to raise their hand and say.
So had I had this way back then, that would have been amazing. Right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that there are a whole bunch of speakers who are called to speak in settings where they have no contact names, email addresses, or anything, where they would love this stuff. The last concept that I want to share with you is the power of content in terms of SEO material.
Mm-hmm.
So people are doing searches. The search might be, how do I increase my lead capture when I speak? Right? So you need to create content. If you're not the content creator, there are lots of people who can create content for you. And you can find them on Fiverr, or there's a website called hireawriter.com.
I like that.
Yeah. So, and so this just drives traffic from people who are literally searching for what you have to offer.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the, just the infusion of hope, right? I'm a typically very positive person, and it's just amazing how the weight of the pivot and all of that stuff just kind of, I think I'm finally in this point of like snapping out of it and recognizing, like, okay, remember what you loved before, why you invested so much of yourself, your personal investment and such in this. And so I appreciate those thoughts, the organizations. A question.
Throw one more thing at you. Mm-hmm. If you find someone in an organization like the Secret Society of Speakers who you say, hey, here's the idea, you want to test it out for me, that person will become a massive promoter for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like for me, for instance, there's I'm a huge introducer. I just introduced you to Stacey Jones. If you didn't know Interview Connections, I would have introduced you there. I'm a huge introducer. I don't get paid for it. I just do it because I'm happy to introduce people to resources.
Right.
So, someone like me, that person who connects people together, is a good person to, I don't even want to say partner with, but develop a great relationship with, where you say, here, Kim, use it, test it out. No strings attached, but if I love it, I'm like, guys, you need to use this. Like, this is a game changer. And so you need those people who are willing to talk about you in that capacity. And that's not, an arrangement per se. It's more of a psychic arrangement.
Yeah.
You're just good for each other.
Right. I love it. Oh,
I hope that helped. That helped.
Oh my goodness. So many ideas now. I'm like, do you hear the paper, guys?
I do. I hear the paper. Wanda, I hope that was useful for you. For those of you who are listening, I hope that was useful for you too. Do you have a catchword for us,
Absolutely.
Wanda?
Absolutely. And I want to hear that on every podcast next year, right? Every podcast. So what's your catchword? So actually what we did is we put together a fantastic guide on how to transform every one of your talks into a lead generating machine. So I tried to package some of the core strategies that we teach, and you can access that by texting leads to 411321 if you're in the US. That's a US short code. But if you are international, you can text leads to 1909 741-1321. If you're watching the video, you could see me point to it right here. We actually do these for all of our clients. We create these backgrounds when they're in this situation. But if you text LEADS, LEADS, to 411-321 or 1-909-741-1321, then you'll get this amazing guide and you'll have an opportunity to test out the technology, but also to hopefully get some really valuable information that'll start boosting and transforming what you do every day in your appearances.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Yay.
For those of you who are listening, if you have a challenge that you want to share on the podcast, please reach out. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. If you have a challenge that you don't want to talk about on the podcast, but you do want to talk about with me, please reach out. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. Wanda, thank you for being my guest on this podcast.
My pleasure. Guys, sign up. This was amazing.